Meet PitchDB, the ultimate platform for speakers looking to make their mark on podcasts, conferences, and media outlets. PitchDB provides access to over 3 million platforms, ensuring you find the perfect avenue for your message. With AI integrations, your bios and pitches are tailored uniquely to each opportunity, giving you the edge you need. Join now at pitchdb.com.
Welcome to Your Brand Amplified, the podcast where we interview marketers, publicists, and brands to learn their stories, what makes them tick, and tips and tricks that make a difference. Today, I am speaking to Alexander Concepcion about his new book, but also about his life as an entrepreneur. First of all, thank you for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And I've seen and everything I've looked at about you, you went from finance to the world of real estate to having multiple companies to now writing a book called Survival First, which is, I love the way you describe it. So I want to leave that up to you, though, to tell the audience a little bit about the impetus behind writing it after you went through all of this other journey.
Yeah. Saying I was in finance is a little bit of a stretch. I attempted to get into finance. I had a finance degree, and I spent years getting rejected from every interview I ever did in finance. And I wound up burning my college diplomas and moving to Texas.
Okay.
And starting effectively, I just hit the reset button and started from scratch.
Yeah.
And I stumbled around from a job, then side gig to side gig, going broke, and then just stumbled into real estate as something I thought was going to buy me some time so I could get a real job. And that was 7 years ago. And I just became an entrepreneur kind of by accident, because nothing else was working.
Yeah.
And thank God.
Yeah. And life was clearly telling you that you were meant to have a different path and be an entrepreneur, not work for somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those cases of the bad things happened for me, and the bad things wound up being good things. Yeah. So I'm very grateful for failing miserably in my early 20s, because I probably would not be the person I am today if it weren't for those failures.
And this is something that I think people are finally starting to feel comfortable talking about, is to reach success, to reach whatever your definition of success is, I should say. You have to have those pivotal moments in your journey that shape who you are, as you mentioned. And they're not always positive, but you can turn them into positives because it's kind of like the universe giving us little nudges, or God, or whatever word you want to use, telling us, this is what you're really supposed to be doing. I'm going to keep telling you until you do that thing. That's really your purpose, your divine purpose, right?
Yeah. The lesson I get over and over again is, if I bet on myself, then life will take me to where I need to go. And that's been the one consistent thing happening to me over the last 10 years. Yeah. And all these major decisions to move somewhere, quit a job, start a business, write a book, are all iterations of betting on myself.
Isn't that funny? Like, feeling now, everybody who's listening or watching, we're just meeting for the first time, but I am so deeply feeling what you're saying, because that is one of the lessons I've had to learn over and over again. No, you're not supposed to do this with this other person. No, you don't need to have a partner for business. You need to really just bet on yourself. And it can be really hard for us to listen to that voice. So I want to dive in a little bit to that part of the story. You said you tried to get into finance. I know, because I've heard from so many people, if you don't have the right connections, you don't go to a certain school, whatever the case, you have a little color in your skin, sometimes it can be a real barrier to jumping into finance. Were those some of the things that you were encountering?
Oh, no. I had all the advantages.
Okay.
I went to the right schools. I had the right connections. Like, I was getting connected to the right people, the right places, and I had the right name. And The real answer, it was my fault because I was self-sabotaging unconsciously, because the conscious side of me was like, yep, that's the thing to do. Check the boxes, do the right things, follow prestige and status, and then things will just magically work out.
Right.
And then the other side of me is like, knock, knock, something's off. And that part of me, I had been burying for years while I was doing all the things I thought I was supposed to be doing. And then when I entered the quote-unquote real world, all of my delusions began to crumble. And that inside voice needed some time to just bang on the door of my soul and be like, hey, dude, this is not the way.
Yeah.
And eventually, after like 2 years of failed interviews, I'm like, okay, I give up. I'm going to go on my own path now.
Yeah.
And let's see where that goes. And that took me away from Miami, where I grew up, to now Austin, Texas, where I've been for the last 9 years.
Did you know anyone in Texas? Usually moves are, because I've moved a few times. I grew up in Kansas. I've lived in Chicago, San Francisco, LA 3 times. This is my third. And Houston. And each of those was for a job or just an impulse or family or different situations. Did you know anyone there, or did you just pick up and say, okay, I'm going to try there?
I had 2 friends here, and I convinced my best friend from college to move here.
Yeah.
But I was going to do it on my own anyways. And yeah, that was the best decision of my life at that point. And yeah, thank God I did that. Because so much of my success as an entrepreneur now has nothing to do with me. I've been in the right place at the right time because my business is helping people find apartments to rent in Austin, Dallas, Houston. And if anyone's been paying attention, everyone's moving here.
Right.
And yeah, I am a beneficiary of forces outside of my control. And that's part of what I describe in the book. It's there's things I control and there's things I don't control, but I need to understand both.
So let's talk about that. I want to get back to the name because Taco Street Locating, fantastic, catchy name.
Yeah.
But so I want to get to that. But let's talk about survival first. So you coined it as the Rebel Entrepreneur's Guide to Risk, Riches, and Immortality.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about this. What will we find in the book? You have amazing reviews on Amazon. So what prompted you to write a book? And I know it's just been released, so that's really exciting too. And what did you find out about yourself in the process?
It's been a 4-year journey. And it's been the most profound, professional, creative, even spiritual experience of my life. What prompted me was COVID and the period of a few months where I was afraid of losing my business. And losing my business would have meant losing the freedom and sovereignty I had earned for myself by becoming an entrepreneur. And I loved the freedom. I loved being able to do things my way. I loved having my own sleep schedule, not having to answer to anyone, getting to do things my way, and getting to spend my time how I want with who I want. And surviving meant keeping all that. And the opposite wound up happening. My business blew up. Yeah, because everyone was moving to Texas.
Right.
Like, there was still a lot of things I had to do, and I still do. They're smart and are effective and good business decisions. But the question that came to mind was, why do businesses die? Because most of them do, and no one really talks about it.
Yeah.
Everyone kind of knows that's the truth, but everyone's kind of talking about everything else other than the fact that most of us don't make it. And this book, this journey, became a journey to understand why I wouldn't survive
Right.
as an entrepreneur. And that was a set of dominoes.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was going to take 4 years and almost $50,000 to figure out. But it's this journey that something clicked inside of me.
Wow.
It was like, this is it. This is the thing. I have to do that. And it just became the thing that I had to do.
4 years. That is quite a journey. I've spoken to people, there's so many companies out there that say you can write a book in 30, 60, 90 days, 6 months, whatever it is. I've spoken to people who take a year, which I think is more typical to come out with a really high. I mean, your book is not just a tiny book. It's 277 pages, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah. So it is hefty reading. So I imagine you had to also go out and do a lot of research, figure out not just your own case studies from your experience, but talk to other entrepreneurs, see what worked, what didn't work in this world of entrepreneurship and risk.
Yeah. The research I did was mostly hanging out and talking with my close friends. Mm-hmm. But there's no academia in the book. There's no real science. There's no statistics. All this is a collection of observations, asking questions in a Socratic method, and just breaking down ideas to their rawest forms and rebuilding an entire worldview, an ecosystem of thought from scratch, just based on asking simple questions, learning about relatable stories, and putting things together. And I think the simple tools that we have in asking questions can take us really, really far. And I think a lot of people over-rely on studies, on other people's research, on other people's ideas for their own decisions, and they discount their own capacity to observe the world.
Yeah, true. There's I think a healthy balance in between there, right? Because I love learning, and I love learning about all the different things I don't know about in the world of communications. But every time I've started a business, it's just been because I wanted to start it. I didn't go in with lots of market research. I knew that there were people who were interested in that idea, or I took something and then it evolved over time based on what my ideal user was asking for, so that I could iterate in real time, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting, thinking about starting with the questions. So what are some of the questions that people should ask themselves if they're starting a business?
The book is largely for people who are already in midair.
Okay.
They have a business. They're already...
But they're...
Yeah. They're in the air.
Yeah.
And maybe things are fine. But a lot of people don't know why their business works, or they don't know why it wouldn't work. Like, what's a business model? And why would it break? Just a simple question like, what is a business model? What's your business model? How does yours work? Why wouldn't it work? Who does it need to work for? Questions like that. Or what is competition? Is it real? I say no. What is your relationship to your business? I think is the question of all questions. Because you could be running a great, successful business that has all the status, the prestige, and the money. But if you're miserable inside,
exactly,
is that a good relationship? And I would argue no. And the final irony of the book, it's maybe the business should die.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we go deep here.
Yeah. It's funny because some of the things you're saying, I'm like, yeah, that's how I teach branding to people when they're thinking about starting a business. That's how some of the questions I ask, maybe in a slightly different way, to figure out what their purpose is. Why are they starting this? What do they want the world to look like because they're creating this? How are they going to help people? All of those kind of questions, right?
Yeah. I put all of those into one question.
Yeah.
Where's the energy coming from? Because it's the energy that powers everything. Because, yeah, you need money and time to run your business, But what you really need is energy.
100%.
If there's no energy, then there's no business. So where does the energy come from? Because to me, survival is a choice.
Mm.
You don't have to be an entrepreneur. You don't have to run this business. You don't have to do this podcast. You do it because you choose to do it. And you do it because the upsides are much bigger than the downsides, I imagine. And it's understanding what other set of circumstances that, if true, you would not want to do this anymore. Like, if you hated doing the podcast, you wouldn't do it.
Right.
So what would make you hate it? Maybe if the operations become too cumbersome, maybe you don't like your guests, maybe it's not getting you the results that you want, but it's understanding what are these things that might drain your energy to do this. And let's look at them head on, to ask the right questions, and then what can we do about it?
Yeah. I mean, these are questions that everybody should be asking, but I'm just trying to frame this because I feel like people get caught up in the day-to-day and all of the tasks that they don't like doing that are draining their energy from the business. And sometimes we all have to do that stuff, right? The non-fun stuff. But today I got to wake up and like chill a little bit, walk my dogs, do a call, do a podcast interview, do some stuff with some of my students, do another podcast interview, finish my presentation for tonight that I'm going to teach. And those are the two things that really bring me the most joy, are podcasting and being a professor. And having these conversations and learning from my guests and going, oh, I can share this with my students tonight because this is something they really need to know if they're going to go into business. And so today was one of those days where I'm like, my energy feels amazing because I get to live in that zone. But I know not every day is like that. But that's that energy that you're talking about that has to keep us going through those other times.
Yeah. And everything we're doing is a network of decisions.
Right.
And everywhere in reality, there are asymmetric decisions. There's decisions where the downside is minimal and the upside is super high. And that's probably what you get from a lot of the work that you do. Or the input, there's input in the energy that you put in, the time you put in, the money you invest, but everything you get in return makes it worth it, I imagine.
Right. Yeah.
And you made a network of decisions that gave you this positive asymmetry. In the same way, we're all looking for positive asymmetry in the decisions we make. We also have to avoid those negative asymmetry decisions. And my book isn't merely about risk and darkness and survival. It's about being able to invert a perspective from the negative risk to the positive opportunity. And how do you hold that tension and not go crazy? Because that's really what we're doing. I think the way to do it is ask the right questions.
You said that this was also a spiritual journey for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Talk about that a little bit, if you don't mind.
It's just something that everything in my body and soul and spirit was telling me, do this. This is the thing. It became this guiding star of my life. And no one made me do this. I did this because like the highest version of myself had to do it. And to create something that does have my soul and spirit in it I don't use the word spiritual a ton because I think it gets overused. But I think this is the best word in this context because I put my spirit into something I created. Into the physical books, into the audiobook that I did. It's literally putting my spirit into something. And for me personally, what I went through was at some point drinking too much of my own risk Kool-Aid and then just driving myself nuts.
Okay.
And then winding up in therapy and learning how to rebalance and find light again and not ignore the darkness, but recognize, okay, it's there. I have to confront it. But also having to relearn how to confront the light again and all the opportunities and all the exciting things of what I could do. And most radically, what I would say is I learned to surrender. And surrender isn't this state of passivity. It's not doing nothing.
Right. It's not giving up.
No. Surrender, the way I understand it, it's showing up and doing what I need to do, but not trying to overly reverse engineer the future. And instead allowing things to unfold as they must.
Yeah.
And trusting that what needs to happen for me will happen for me. I just don't know what that's going to be.
Yeah. But that's, as you said, it's not just about the darkness, it's about the light. And I think I get the most beautiful results when I say, I'm going to be present, I'm going to do the work, but I'm also going to put my trust in that it's just, that something else is going to happen. And that as long as I keep doing the work and I have the belief in myself and the love for myself and all that, and the initiative, I guess, because I don't believe in just manifestation and abundance. Like you have to co-create, like you have to do the action to get what you want, but you have to, like you said, you can have your eye on a prize, but you can't say these are exactly the steps I'm going to take, because things will change and shift and something even more beautiful might appear. And that's kind of what it sounds like happened for you. You were worried about your business. You decided to write this book, and then your business got even bigger. So in that process, did that take away some of that freedom and flexibility that you had been striving for?
No, because I've set up my business in such a way that I probably only work on it 10, maybe 15 hours a week. And I made the choice to deliberately not grow anymore because what I realized is this isn't my forever business. It's not a long-term. I'm not going to marry the business. These days, I see it more as an asset that I own. And it's a slightly different relationship type. But at a certain point, I realized I need to go in a different direction. And that's why I started the next business, which is an education program about how to do my business. But that's largely the phase I'm in right now. It's now that the book is out, now that I've created something, now what? I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's a very exciting place to be. And I don't know what happens from here. I don't know what doors are going to open or how they're going to open. But yeah, I became very conscious and deliberate about the relationship I do want with my business and don't want with my business. And I did not want to turn what I have into a big company where I'm managing a bunch of people. That's just not what I wanted. So I'm not doing it.
Yeah. Well, you're being authentic to your values, your version of success. When you built this business, though, what was that process like? Because you were new to a city, you got involved in real estate. How did you decide, this is the business I need to be in, helping other people relocate and find their ideal home? And then how did you grow it and scale it to the extent that you did?
Yeah. So my niche is helping people find apartments to rent. And when I started, I was broke, like asking dad for rent money type broke. And I started closing a few deals and immediately started to realize there was a lot of money to be made in this business. And I can go from broke to not broke fast. And so there's so much of this frantic energy just to escape brokenness that made me invest in operations and the brand and building systems and hiring assistants and doing all of these things to make more money, to be less broke, and to still carve out time for myself to travel. I've been able to travel the world for in total about a year over the last 7 years, which has been great. But I've grown the business, but I haven't necessarily scaled it. I think scaling kind of implies like mega growth, like exponential growth.
There.
I'm kind of just hanging out in like low six figures here. Like I'm not doing like none of my numbers are super crazy or interesting, but I have a strong, stable business that's rooted in a fundamentally sound industry and economy. And it gives me a lot of stability and resources to do other things. Like I couldn't have self-financed this book if it weren't for the business. And the business has served me really well.
Yeah. Well, and I think most people don't get into entrepreneurship necessarily striving to make tens or hundreds of millions of dollars. They go into it to have a good living that they can do things with that they want to do, and that flexibility that you're talking about. So it sounds like you're really at a sweet spot and a place where many people would want to be. So it makes sense that you have written this book asking the questions that you would probably ask your younger self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this book, I didn't write it for the super scalers or the people getting venture financing or the like people in public companies. Most of the people I'm writing for and describe in the book are just ordinary people who have businesses that you've never heard of. Most of them are just my friends, some are family. They're just ordinary people who happen to have businesses. I'll even go so far as to say that this is not a business book. This is a human book. Well, humans who happen to have businesses. And I kind of overdosed on business books. I read a bunch of them, and a lot of them served me really well.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, I just burned out, and I just stopped reading almost all of them.
Well, you've also created maybe a new type of business book, because everything we hear in marketing and everything I hear from my students in grad school, right? Everybody wants authenticity. They want to humanize the brands behind them. So we don't want to just read, here's how to make gazillions of dollars and follow this process. And you have to get up at 4 a.m. and you have to do this, these protocols in the morning and la, 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 la. Like, people really want to know how they can have full, rich lives, be authentically themselves, and be really happy and make a living.
Yeah. The reason I chose the word rebel in the subtitle, because I think there is this mass rebellion happening where people en masse are rejecting the major institutional path of employment as the route of business because it's dehumanizing. When your life is dedicated to maximizing shareholder value, that's literally what your life is for. And will you do that? And a lot of people deciding, no, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to live as a human. And for me to live as the human I want to live, I have to own my income. I have to have financial sovereignty. I've got to create something because I can't give control of my life to an institution that does not care about me. And that's what that voice inside of me in my early 20s intuited. It knew that if I went down that finance path, that corporate path, then it was going to take me to this dark place. And that the deeper you get into that world, the harder it is to get out.
Yeah. If you have all the trappings.
Yeah. And back then, my risk profile was very different. Single, no anything. So my downside wasn't super high. And I made a decision with asymmetric upside in moving to a place like this. And yeah, so my risk senses have been tingling for a long time. And it's only in this book that I've come to understand what this thing is. Because risk it's partially something you can understand with numbers and formulas, but how many risk formulas do you have? Ordinary people don't calculate risk with numbers, but we do have questions, and we have our own intuition and our own ability to see the world. And that's largely what I describe and how to think about risk and opportunity at the same time. It's just looking at the world around you, asking the right questions, and having the courage to answer those questions, even if they're painful.
Well, let's talk about spending $50,000 publishing your book, because that is a pretty lofty number. I've heard that if you have a ghostwriter, I've heard that figure thrown out, right? I've heard usually a little bit lower than that, probably, particularly for self-publishers. But I really want to understand the process, because I do feel that most people have a story they want to share. They have a book that might come out someday, but you see a lot of people who are like, oh, it's really easy. But I know that the process is not easy, right?
So I do have my book website, survivalfirstbook.com. And in there is a link to the Survival First Substack, where I wrote a 24-part series specifically about making the book, every single step of the way.
Wow.
From coaching to editing to design to doing the audiobook, everything. So about 9,000 went into like coaching for the beginning stages. I worked with a company called Scribe Media, and they helped me a ton just to get started. And they've changed up their coaching programs and the company structure since, working with 4 different editors. So there's developmental editing, structural editing, copy and line editing, and then proofreading. It's probably $6,000-$7,000 alone. There's book cover design. There's interior layout. There's interior graphics. There's a publishing manager that I hired, matchmaker, setting up with a bunch of like niche like role players. There's the audiobook, which I recorded in right by Times Square. That was about 9,000. And then like an audiobook coach, audiobook producer. Yeah. That's then marketing, which I'm still paying for. Yeah. There's a lot going on.
Yeah.
My next book is going to be a lot cheaper.
But you know how to do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And also you really put together a team to make it, as I said, it's a hefty book. It's not just, most people who self-publish come out with, and I have been in a couple of anthologies where we each only have to write a chapter. No big deal. 2,500 to 3,000 words, done, right? But this is a whole other undertaking.
Yeah.
To really, it sounds like that feeling that you had inside, just, if you had written that book, you wouldn't be content. You needed to really go through this whole process and put it all out there.
Yeah. I think there's a little to no positive asymmetry in publishing a bad book. So I think a mediocre $25,000 book would be more expensive than an amazing $50,000 book.
Right.
And this is just what my sense is and what my soul was guiding me towards. This is a thing, put everything in it, all the chips on the table, go all in, hire the best people, do what they say. And I had to show up and make sure that I could write the best book I could possibly write.
Yeah.
The manuscript alone took 3 years. Editing took 6 months. And part of what the minor miracles that have been happening this entire time is just the people I've met along the way and how I've met them and the circumstances. I have built an all-star team. Everyone that's on my book team is top of their game. They're amazing at what they do. And I got to work with them directly because a lot of things went down with a company, Scribe. They're fine now, I think. But I got to work with like the best of the best. And people would just come into my life. The right people coming into my life at the right time. Like my marketing guy, it just happened to be just one of my buddies at the gym, specializes in book marketing. Like, oh, great, you're my guy. And just so many little things like that that led me to understand what faith and surrender are. Because there were just too many things that have been happening for me in just serendipitous ways that it's like, okay, so there's something going on. And I'm just going to ride this wave and see where this goes. And I have faith that awesome stuff is going to happen. I just don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, one thing that you talk about with creating the book is accidentally creating an ethic.
Yeah. The first 3 words of the book are through darkness, light.
Mm.
And towards the end, what I kind of realized the path that I was following mirrors Dante's Divine Comedy, like Dante's Inferno.
Mm-hmm.
And the hyper spark notes explanation of the Divine Comedy is the poet Virgil guiding the protagonist Dante through hell so that he may reach paradise. In my book, is basically the same thing.
So are there 9 levels of hell that you had to get through to
20 something, because there's a lot of chapters, but the ethic is confronting darkness, confronting risk, so that you may create the paradise you want. And that's confronting the darkness of the world, the darkness in your business, and most importantly, the darkness in yourself. And how do we confront that darkness? Because if you don't, then that darkness confronts you. And if you do that work, it's hard. It's not fun. But I think if you confront darkness, then you get to experience light.
And what would some examples be for you for darkness? Would that be if you're working a job that is against your morals and ethical values? Is it getting sick repeatedly, having physical manifestations that you're not in the right place, you're not doing the right thing?
Yeah. I think what's relevant for a lot of entrepreneurs is, one of my chapters is what I call competency risk.
Mm.
And it's all about the tension between business or ego. And a lot of people choose ego, and they destroy their businesses. They destroy their relationships because the darkness of their ego becomes the guiding force, and they do not confront it. And therefore, they make decisions that serve their ego instead of their business. I think that's a really important one.
This is definitely a deep conversation and much different than I could have imagined. But that's what I love about getting on and actually getting into the conversation. Mm-hmm. I know the book was just released, but what has happened for you in the, 2 weeks since it's been released? Do you have a feeling of loss because you've spent so much time perfecting this and getting it out into the world? Are you doing a lot? Are you on like a little mini press junket, speaking to people like me and other people? Are you going to turn it into perhaps your next course and a way to teach people and speak about these topics?
The dominant feeling is relief and excitement. Because I've been a pressure cooker of energy for the last 4 years, just holding this thing inside of me that has so much of my brain and soul in it that no one around me, I was able to talk about the book with people, but I've never been able to release that energy.
Okay.
And it's like when you cook with a pressure cooker and you press the button, all steam goes out.
Right.
That's been the visceral experience. And just so proud of what I've done. And so excited that I finally get to share this thing with my close friends, my family. So I want them to know what I've gone through, what I've created, and it's so much of like an intimate experience that like I know the close friends around me, they're going to know what I went through. They're going to know this journey. And that feels so cool. And I love just yesterday I was passing out copies of my book to just friends at my gym that they know I've been working on this. And finally, here's the thing. It's here. Here's a copy. And just getting to share it with my friends has been really, really awesome. It hasn't been some like big splashy book launch, like in internet fame terms. I'm still kind of a nobody, but I'm radically confident that this is a special book, special journey, and it's only a matter of time before people know what I know. So I was never expecting a big launch. I'm just enjoying the ride for what it is. And I know that what needs to happen will happen. And it's only a matter of time before it does.
You said in your day-to-day, right, you have your business, but now you've moved to teaching people how to start a similar business. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'm in that I'm in that transition right now. Now that I have more energy, I can work on new marketing campaigns to get people to the course. Just flexing new muscles that I've never flexed before, working on new things. It feels like I'm reviving my entrepreneur muscles because for years, my business was just coasting on things I had built in the past. And I wasn't doing anything new. And now I'm doing new things, which is great.
Yeah.
And I'm just learning, how do I turn my knowledge and experience into a product that I can sell? Like, that's a really interesting business to me, because it largely mirrors the book experience. And the course is just another expression of information and knowledge.
Right. So
I've revived the entrepreneur energy that was kind of dying. And I've got resources to hire people, to work with people, to bring this thing to the world. And you're going to think I'm psycho, but I'm already 40,000 words into my next book.
Wow.
So I'm writing the definitive book on this business.
Wow. Yeah.
How it works. No one's done it, so I'm going to do it. And yeah, I just get to breathe and plan some trips again.
Right. Get some of your non-work energy, mojo moving again.
Because my alter ego is like a low budget Anthony Bourdain adventure monkey that loves to travel the world and go places and wander around and see cool stuff. So yeah, I got some of that to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Sounds like you have a lot of exciting stuff coming up. And if we go to survivalfirstbook.com, we'll be able to find out more about your future course, also get to your Substack and get all the links to buy your book.
Yeah, the Survival First Book website has a link to the Amazon page for the people interested in the book writing journey. There's a Substack linked in there. And if anyone's interested in the actual business that I run, tacostreetlocating.com. It's a fun brand. But yeah, I think that sums it up.
Let's get back to that really fast, because I wanted to ask about the name, and we never got to that, because the name alone, I'm like, oh, that's really good branding.
So I never wanted to be in real estate. I kind of hate most of real estate, and I did not want to be just another agent running another generic, soulless brand that a lot of real estate brands are. I wanted a business on my terms, and it was going to be funny and ridiculous. You haven't seen that part of me yet, but there's a lot of that.
Okay.
And I'm a huge foodie, and Austin is such a taco-oriented city. And if you invert street taco, you get taco street. And to me, that sounds obvious for a great name for a real estate business.
One.
So that first reason is kind of more just for my soul. Is I needed something that was fun and playful and an expression of me. But more practically, it's why I mentioned before that competition isn't real, because I'm never competing against another real estate business. Instead, we're playing different games next to each other.
Okay.
And the person making the decision about who wins the game is the client.
Mm-hmm.
And a client is a human with agency, and they are going to choose me or not me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not competition, it's replacement risk. The risk is me being replaced. So the more you can be replaced, the more you will be replaced. And to become irreplaceable, a monopoly, you have to stand out. So a taco-themed real estate business stands out. So there's a lot of function behind it, but it just takes changing the frame. Because I think a lot of people have the copycatting problem. They become commodities. They look like everyone else. And if you ask a very simple question, if you're just like everyone else, why would anyone choose you? The answer is they won't. And then your business will die. So those are the two reasons why I have a taco-themed real estate business.
Well, the name evokes a feeling of, oh, this is going to be somebody fun to work with. It's not going to be the same office that's going to give me all the same spiel that everybody else will. Yeah.
My clients love it. My reviews are great. And I just feel better having a business where I'm just me. I'm not a fake version of me.
Right.
And that's necessary for my soul.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you really, really want people to know?
Yeah. I think the most important part of the book is towards the end. It's what I call relationship risk.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important risk to think about is being in a relationship with your business that you don't want.
Mm.
And a lot of people wind up in situationships, which are these relationships that form, these unbounded relationships that take on forms that no one wants.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the default for so many people is grow, or scale, or more, and winding up in a position where you just get more headaches and you wind up hating the business that you've created and become a prisoner in a prison that you built.
Mm.
And I think there's a lot of people looking for permission that, no, you don't have to grow your business. I think it's more important that you have a business that you like
Mm-hmm.
and that gives you what you want. And I think there's another large and quiet segment that's looking for permission to end their businesses or get rid of it. Because that's something that you don't really hear about, is people who are on the surface successful, but actually hate their businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe their personas that they know aren't real online. Maybe for you, the entrepreneur, to survive, your business has to die, and that's okay.
Yeah. I think most businesses fail, but if you are an entrepreneur, if your soul, if in your heart of hearts, that is who you are. It's not necessarily a death. It could be a rebrand, a reframing, something new coming out that really is more purpose-driven for you, depending on what your business is, of course. So, yeah, a lot to think about, Alex.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to bring you back on once you've built your course and have your next book out so that we can see the more levity-filled side of Alexander Concepcion. I always ask for a favorite quote, mantra, motto, verse, words that are really speaking to you right now.
Yeah. It's something I saw in the Prado Museum in Madrid. It's whether I dream or not, being the son of my delusions is enough for me to undertake lofty deeds. And to me, what that felt like was it's okay to be a little bit delusional in terms of dreaming something big and ambitious and ridiculous. But if it's an admirable delusion, if it's something ridiculous but beautiful, then it's worth holding kind of crazy ideas. And that quote kind of just stuck to me for a long time.
Yeah. Well, that is a beautiful way to wrap up this episode. So Alexander Concepcion's survival first book and Taco Street. Thank you so much for being on Your Brand Amplified today. I really appreciate your time and energy with us.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you to everyone who's watching or listening to this episode. I know that if you're like me, you're going to go out and look at the Substack, go buy the book. I always learn new things. It doesn't matter how long you've been in business and how many times you switch your business like me. There's always something new to learn. And I'm really excited to dive more into your perspective and this line of inquiry and the philosophical side, if you will, of being an entrepreneur and business person.
Yeah, so, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm excited also.
Awesome. All right. I'll see everybody tomorrow with another amazing guest. Want more? Check out amplifywithannika.com or follow me on socials at amplifywithannika.